I'm sure you've all heard it, the story of the boy who cried wolf, the boy who runs out every day screaming that there are wolves attacking his sheep, only for all the concerned villagers to run out and see that there were in fact no wolves attacking any sheep. False alarm. And the boy does that several times only for the villagers to keep realizing it's only just that, a false alarm. So the one day wolves actually do show up to attack his sheep, the villagers don't come out because they've learned not to trust or believe him. I feel like that story represents Marcus Stroman pretty well, except instead of those wolves actually coming to attack in the end, it's still just a repeated false alarm by the boy for no other reason than to be an asshole. After all these years, there remains no situation where Stroman actually needs defending in. It's all just false alarms and not necessarily creating problems. Stroman's always been a very feisty and toxic person. Someone who likes to deflect, he blames everyone but himself, brings up things that don't even correlate to the situation at hand, shows his own teammates up, leaves a bad taste in the clubhouses he's been in, and the more years that go by, more fan bases from all around, more players from all around are getting an understanding and true first-hand experience on what he's really like, on just how toxic he can be. And the more those years go by, the more and more it's hard to defend him. I mean, we've gotten to a point where even if you're a diehard Stroman supporter, I mean, I'm talking you take a bullet for the guy. Even those people at this point got to be like, yeah, I don't know how to justify this. Stroman has officially picked his new team and fan base to piss off, the New York fan base. Oh wait, I gotta be more specific because he's already pissed off one of the New York fan bases. And well, this all goes much deeper than what just happened. And this video has been a long time coming. Really quick as always, if you're part of the 51% of viewers not subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that button if you enjoy the videos, as I think it's important to go back to the beginning to realize how far back this goes. Marcus Stroman, I think, is a perfect example of someone who tells you his reality rather than showing you his reality. His whole persona has been revolved around the idea that he's this underdog. This guy nobody thought anything of, someone everyone wrote off. You'd think this man got his first job in baseball begging on the streets, that he had to fight his way into proving himself just to start out his career, and has had to fight so much adversity in life, whether it's because of his height, his race, or whatever. But no, he was a first-round draft pick back in 2012, and the first player ever out of Duke to get drafted in the first round. Nobody before him had done that, and before getting drafted was deemed as the most major league ready player in the entire draft. I mean, the dude dominated at Duke, literally setting the record for career strikeouts there, dominated in the Cape Cod Baseball League 2 during the summer. He was named an All-Star there in 2010 and even inducted into their Hall of Fame a couple years ago. So immediately you can see some of the inconsistencies with Stroman's story compared to how he acts, how he carries himself. So he's this top draft pick, looked to already be on a fast track to the big leagues, and then almost immediately gets popped for a 50-game suspension after testing positive for a banned substance I'm not even going to pretend to act like I know how to pronounce, but it's apparently a substance that can boost energy and mask fatigue. And it's a substance Stroman claimed to, quote, unknowingly ingest that was in an over-the-counter supplement. Now, he's far from the only player to do something like this and use that as an excuse that he unknowingly took it. Whoops! Whether that's the genuine reason or the excuse is a PR move, when so many other players do that, it's not so exclusive to Stroman. He, without any issue, accepted the suspension without any appeal, came back in 2013, pitches well in AA, and after continuing to pitch well in 2014, now in AAA, gets called up and pitches very well in his first ever big league season. He didn't strike out the world, but he kept the ball on the ground and again was really effective. Nothing to complain about. In Stroman's first few years in the big leagues, there wasn't many issues as far as his attitude or anything like that. I mean, early on, I don't ever remember anything like that about the guy. He just simply seemed like a young, fun, up-and-coming star on the Blue Jays. Like, I want to make it clear, I was actually Team Stroman early on. This guy really had potential to be one of my favorite players. Not that that matters a single bit to him or anyone. Obviously, who cares? I don't think Stroman's life would ever be impacted if he was my favorite player or not. But the point is how much he self-sabotaged himself. Because it's not just me, he's turned against himself. And we'll get to that later, but with how strong he was in 2014, there was a lot of hype heading into the next season, although he unfortunately didn't pitch much in 2015, the first Blue Jays playoff team in 22 years, because of a torn UCL in spring training. But he did come back for the last month and was actually pretty damn good, also going on to make 3 starts in the postseason, 2 of them being wins. 2016, he gets the honor of the opening day starter, where he pitched into the 9th inning and got the win. It did have a little moment of feistiness in that game after getting low Logan Morrison to fly out. Stroman said something to himself that I think Morrison felt disrespected by or whatever, and Stroman, as you can clearly read his lips, said he wasn't talking to him. He went on to not necessarily be great for the whole year, but he was good. Solid starter with the highest ground ball rate in the entire league, along with the lowest fly ball percentage at the same time. The Blue Jays made the postseason again. He started the wild card game that they won and got one start in the ALCS against Cleveland. Then he puts up an awesome 2017 season, throwing over 200 innings for the second year in a row now, but now with an ERA right at 3. I mean, you can't ask for much better than that. In fact, Stroman did the absolute most that year, even going deep at one point. In a game against the White Sox late that season where he got the win, a situation similar to the Morrison one happened, except this time it was Tim Anderson, so this whole thing makes a lot of sense. I mean, talk about the two most perfect guys to have some sort of issue with one another. After striking Anderson out, Stroman kind of gave him a look. Anderson kept looking at him, and then the two started yelling at each other. Just like the Morrison situation, a fight didn't break out or anything. It was nothing more than just a little bit of yelling. But it's before the 2018 season where the online controversial stuff heated up, or at least got started, when he lost his arbitration hearing with the Blue Jays and was going to be paid less than what he was going after before this season. And I will say it is weird that he lost his arbitration hearing, because the year before he also went to an arbitration hearing and won. Again, 2016 wasn't a bad season, but it wasn't great by any means. His ERA was 4.37. I'm the furthest thing from an expert in how these things work, but you'd think he'd win his arbitration case after a year like 2017, where his ERA was 3 in an overall much improved year. But either way, he lost, he wasn't happy about it, and he went to Twitter to complain about it. And again, this is the kind of stuff that doesn't necessarily look terribly bad for Stroman. He has every right as a player to get as much money as possible and fight for that, as much as he feels he's worth. You could go two routes with any player going to arbitration. That the player should be less greedy and just take the money instead of fighting for an extra few $100,000, or you could look at the owner and ask him not to be cheap and just give the player an extra few $100,000. But anyway, Stroman lost his case, going to Twitter and saying, "Lost arbitration is what it is. Looking forward to going out and dealing again. The negative things that were said against me by my own team will never leave my mind. I'm thick-skinned, so it will only fuel the fire. Can't wait for this year," closing things off with his signature HDMH, aka height doesn't measure heart. Now, okay, I feel like if you're thick-skinned, you don't have to tell the whole world that you're thick-skinned. Kind of feel like that's how it works. But anyway, his 2018 season made the Blue Jays winning that case actually look valid, though, because he was awful, like really, really bad. So not the best of timings to have a year like that after you're complaining you lost your case. But he was back to starting on opening day in 2019, pitched much better. And this is also the end of his time in Toronto, but not before another little incident, this time with Marcus Semien in Oakland. Little Marcus on Marcus crime action. Stroman's bread and butter has always been his messing with timing. Since he doesn't necessarily throw that hard and strike the world out, he's relied on ground balls and messing with the timing of hitters, really leaning into the art of pitching. And in this case, Semien wasn't having it with the quick pitching, yelling out that he wasn't ready while Stroman tells him to put his hand up and call time if he wasn't ready. So at this point in time, most of Stroman's quote-unquote controversies were non-crazy on-field stuff, just him being very animated or doing his little antics and getting other people pissed off. There was another little beef between him and the Red Sox when he was still on the Blue Jays that started with something similar to Marcus Semien's issues. Michael Chavis had taken time to mess with Stroman's rhythm and timing, only for Stroman to immediately fire in a pitch before he was fully ready, getting back in the box. Now, neither person is really wrong here, just a mental and timing battle, but Chavis, along with Chris Sale from the dugout, were not happy with Stroman, yelling some stuff at him, while manager Alex Cora went to the umpire to complain about the issue, saying afterward that it's the same thing with him every day with Stroman, that he competes a certain way and people don't like it. Also adding that it seems like whenever a team comes in, someone screams at him, basically calling Stroman out for having issues with everyone everywhere he goes. As for Stroman, the thick-skinned man himself, who has to make sure to let you know that he's thick-skinned, said he didn't know what Chris Sale had said to him or care what he or anyone said to him because the situation was between him and Chavis. He couldn't, of course, just leave it there, though. He obviously had to tweet about it the next morning, taking to the internet, tweeting out another shot at the Red Sox. He just can't help himself, because minutes later he tweeted again, this time taking a shot at Cora, specifically name-dropping him, and saying he's still probably mad he didn't choose to play for Team Puerto Rico over Team USA. And even a month later, this wasn't over, because after another strong start against the Red Sox, this time in Boston, Stroman screamed in the direction of the Red Sox dugout after striking out Eduardo Nunez for the final out of the 6th inning, and the screaming didn't end there. It continued just toward his own team soon after that, after he was traded. The Blue Jays weren't good, it was time for a trade, and this is where a lot of weird stuff happened. Stroman was traded to the Mets, and after the game that day, the Blue Jays game, Stroman's final as a member of the team, the clubhouse had to be closed off to the media because of a commotion inside. Reporters could hear something going on even though they weren't allowed in, and soon after, Stroman confirmed that he was part of that noise, saying that the commotion was a discussion. A discussion? Discussions usually don't, get so hostile. They're referred to as an ugly scene while the media has to be barred from entering, giving me these kind of vibes.
Did you put your name into the goblet of fire, Harry? Dumbledore asked calmly.
Harry, you put your name in the goblet of...
So Stroman says it was between him and some of the coaches and higher-ups in the Blue Jays organization, calling it an exit meeting where he was just voicing his opinion, before adding that he didn't like how a couple of things were handled along with the process, but that it had nothing to do with the Mets. And then he later called the reports of him wanting to go to the Yankees completely false. Completely false. Well, Stroman can say whatever he wants, but here are the facts of what we do know. Stroman, a very active Twitter user, had been liking tweets of the idea of him going to the Yankees, basically making his desire to play for them as much as he could without blatantly saying it. And another pretty reliable source on Stroman wanting to play for the Yankees? His literal dad coming out and saying so. Straight up saying that his son was psyched and hoping it was the Yankees he got traded to. So wait a minute, if you're calling those media reports completely false, what about your own dad? Should have probably told him to lie too if you wanted us to believe you truly didn't care it wasn't the Yankees you were traded to. Or maybe you should have tried pulling the classic,
You're not my dad.
But anyway, he goes to the Mets and overall pitched pretty damn well with them. He opted out of 2020 because of the pandemic, but pitched well to end 2019 and for the entirety of 2021, actually leading the Mets in wins. Okay, great. Everything's going well. Except because it's Marcus Stroman, nothing's ever okay. Now, it goes back to his early years. He was drafted first round. He made it to the big leagues pretty quick. I mean, yeah, he's on the shorter side in terms of height, but in terms of pure talent, I don't think too many people have looked at Stroman and said this guy sucks. I mean, you don't get drafted in the first round if that was the case, but he's had this whole chip on his shoulder his entire career. And look, I'm all for doing whatever it takes to motivate yourself and get the best performance out of yourself. That's 100% okay. But it just doesn't feel very authentic. It never has. Everyone deals with adversity, but Stroman seems like he constantly searches for opportunities to paint himself as a victim who has to have that chip on his shoulder to prove himself to the world. He looks for adversities that aren't there. So after becoming a free agent in 2021, the Mets were rumored to want Robbie Ray or Kevin Gausman. And somehow, some way, Stroman found a way to make this about race. Liking a tweet that suggested the Mets only preferred Gausman or Ray because they were white and nobody ever wants to see a black man succeed. Yeah, I'm sure it had nothing to do with Robbie Ray just winning a Cy Young Award and Gausman finishing 6th in the National League Cy Young voting while being an All-Star. No. Surely Steve Cohen, a Jewish man, has a Klan outfit stashed away in his closet. And I mean, some of these tweets Stroman were off the deep end. What are we doing here? This is real. He actually liked this tweet. It's not Photoshop, no matter how much Stroman would want you to believe it is. Stroman soon after signed with the Cubs and continued to trash the Mets on the way out, saying he's beyond thankful he's gone from that organization. But he wasn't done, going at the fans next and accusing Mets fans of directing death threats and racial slurs at him while the front office didn't care. Interesting how that didn't come out until after the Mets didn't re-sign you. You had every moment during your time on the team to say what was going on. Why didn't you say anything then if it was that bad and blatant? I mean, the way he made it sound was like he was around racist people in a Spike Lee movie. But I get it. Mets players deal with racial slurs all the time. I mean, you've surely heard all the stories from Doc Gooden, Carlos Beltran, Francisco Lindor, and all the racial hate they received. Mets fans are so racist, they even called Mike Piazza the N-word once. You've surely heard of all that stuff. Stuff that, doesn't exist. Very fascinating how not a single other black player on the Mets at that time or at any time, or any minority Mets player of any kind at any time, has accused Mets fan of anything like that. It's just Stroman, after he for some reason got mad the team preferred better pitchers over him. yet we're supposed to take what he says for face value. Okay. Also, if you're gonna preach against racism and hate, maybe avoid doing things that would fall under that category yourself, including liking a tweet that called Mets reporter Anthony DiComo a slur that's against Italians. Just like if you're gonna claim you're thick-skinned, maybe don't constantly show that you care about what everyone is saying about you on the internet 24/7. So off to Chicago he goes, where he'd get named an All-Star for the second time in his career in 2023. He was injured a good chunk of those both years as a Cub in 2022 and 2023, but when he was able to pitch, he pitched pretty well overall. But there was a start against the Mets in 2023, where credit to Stroh, he pitched well, really well. 8 innings, 2 runs, but after the double play he got to complete those 8 innings, he had a little extra energy coming off the mound, clearly showing up the Mets and taunting their dugout. And the Mets themselves obviously didn't like this, with an anonymous player on the team saying that he should show some respect and be a professional because it isn't all about him. Now, I will say this, I do think whoever said that shouldn't have said it anonymously. Why not just be open about what you think? Like, that's a little weird and weak. But as for Stroman, look, you can celebrate however you want. I'm all for it. But again, it just doesn't seem very authentic. What reason really was there to hate the Mets again? I understand as human beings we have egos, and when you see a team prefer other pitchers over you, even if they're objectively better than you, you want to prove them wrong, but it was never personal. Again, anything that helps you perform, but it seemed like a very exaggerated, over-the-top, forced reaction. In June 2023, Stroman decided to burn bridges, now with the Cubs, or at least try to, straight up tweeting out that the Cubs weren't interested in extending his contract, which is of course a very unprofessional thing to do. Like, you don't just tweet that out there. It was obviously a shot at the team. The Cubs general manager, Jed Hoyer, responded by saying they don't talk about those things publicly, that he loved the fact Stroman wants to be there and did confirm the two were talking, but preferred to keep that in-house. 3 months later, Stroman declines his option for the 2024 season and later signs with the Yankees. Something that undeniably was weird considering how much he had trashed the team in the years leading up to this, the years, after he wasn't traded there initially, of course. Now, to be fair, Yankees general manager back in 2019, Brian Cashman, did say that they were interested in Stroman, but didn't think he would be a difference maker and felt he'd be in their bullpen in the postseason that year. So Stroman obviously took that and ran with it. At the time, liking several tweets bashing the team, like this one in 2019, that suggested the Yankees must regret not getting him in that year's deadline after they lost a postseason game. While he was still employed by the Mets, he's liking tweets saying the Yankees regret not trading for him. But he never wanted to go there. That was all fake. He was completely happy with being a Met and all the racial hate he got from their fans. See how little sense this all makes when you put it together? He said nobody beside Garrett Cole and the Yankees would be anywhere as good as him over the next 5 to 7 years. He replied to a fan who made an edit of him in a Yankee uniform back in 2021 with 50 Cent smiling and driving away, and said his do-rags, dreads, and tattoos weren't going anywhere, while also clowning on the Yankees for having a big payroll, only to fail to win the World Series every year. All of that just to end up signing with the Yankees anyway. Well, Cashman apologized to Stroman during the negotiations, while Stroman said they hashed it out and just laughed about it. They moved on. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to move on after getting paid $37 million. It's a business. The beef is squashed. Things are fine now. And, we're a year later now, and things are as fine as P. Diddy's career. I wonder where that shirt is right now. A shirt he wore while, as you can see, promoting a children's book. Hollywood couldn't even write this kind of irony. Although, I mean, yeah, it makes sense. They were all too busy at those parties. Stroman was not very good in 2024. And it took just not even 3 months for Aaron Judge to be like, okay, bro, you gotta chill out. After the Yankees failed to turn a double play with the bases loaded, Stroman was visibly pissed off, showing up his teammates. After walking the next hitter, he was taken out before throwing another little fit in the dugout and yelling a ton. Soon after that, the captain, Aaron Judge, went to Stroman and addressed it, basically telling him that they don't do that here. And I mean, if Aaron Judge has enough of a problem with you, he has to say something, especially when you're on his team. That really tells you all you need to know. And this also goes back to the fact that Stroman is a D1 athlete when it comes to burning bridges with people for zero reason whatsoever. Whether it's making it impossible for people to be fans of his, or former big league pitcher Dallas Braden, the guy who's the current A's broadcaster and / baseball podcaster, for example. Here he is along with baseball podcaster Jared Carabas explaining their firsthand experience with their relationship with Stroman and how much of a 180 he took out of nowhere. Watch.
I remember reaching out to him and talking to him when we were at Barstool, having conversations about what we were trying to do, what we were aiming to do, right? I was laying it out for him. Yeah, man, want to come to the pad, whatever access you're willing to give us, we'll take. If it's a sit down in the fucking living room, whatever, whatever you got. And he was like, oh yeah, come to the pad. I'm going to be working out. We'll show you everything, right? Like he took us through the house, went out on the dock, hung out, had a great conversation, everything. And then the next year, like I had never met the dude.
Yeah.
Like I had never met the dude. And I was like, this is just, the only reason this is weird is because like I was playing with your dog, we're hanging out on your dock and shit. I'm not asking you to like remember me and come up and give me a hug or anything like that. But when I come up and say, hey Stro, what's going on? And like it's just crickets, like
yeah.
Okay.
So I think what happened was we did the interview at his house in 2019. I think it was around the time that Dave interviewed Trump, and then he just went off the deep end on like an anti-Barstool tirade, and we got looped into that. And he had unfollowed me on everything. I was like, whatever, that's fine. Like it is what like if you don't want to support the company, then I guess I'm a part of it, so guilty by association.
Again, there's no issue with motivating yourself, but when you reach and go as far as you possibly can to ruin relationships with people and force chips on your shoulder, it's just unnecessary. It's unlikable. Back to the Yankees incident, though. So Gleyber Torres, the guy who Stroman was upset with, ends up going deep soon after Stroman's meltdown and talk with Judge. Stroman ends up being the first person to cheer him on from the dugout, basically like an apology, and after the game, everything seemed to be fine. Apparently, Judge even apologized for not catching what he said should have been the first out of that inning, which seems like something Judge said just to make Stroman feel a little bit better, and that sounds like something Judge would do. The guy who is always the bigger person, literally and figuratively. Torres had no issue with Stroman's emotion, and neither did Aaron Boone. But this gets to the most current issue the Yankees face. This does speak to a larger issue than just Stroman with the Yankees, but this team is a little soft. Aaron Boone specifically, which I'll get into, but it's spring training now. Pitchers and catchers have reported, as they always report first. But Stroman, he wasn't there. He didn't show up until days after he was technically supposed to. Now, Stroman's year on the field last year was so underwhelming that he didn't throw a single pitch during their entire postseason run, and it's been known the team has been trying to trade him all offseason. Aaron Boone said he had an idea Stroman might miss time and has attempted to nudge Stroman to rejoin his teammates, acknowledging this spring could be awkward for him. Now, under the collective bargaining agreement, all players must be in their respective camps by February 22nd, so technically he doesn't have to be there before then, even though it's pretty much an unofficial team rule you show up before that, especially as a pitcher. Like, nobody shows up by February 22nd. They're all there minimum a week before. And Boone addressed all this by saying Stroman is within his rights even though he wants him there. I'm sorry, are we talking about a literal child here? Yeah, I had a feeling Stroman wouldn't report on time, his feelings are hurt. But you know, I've been telling him he really should come and rejoin his teammates. Boone also defended Stroman unfollowing the team by saying it's just a protocol thing that he does and there's nothing deeper into it. Sure, Stroman going out of his way to unfollow the Yankees on Instagram has nothing to do with him also showing up late to spring training. This is the New York Yankees we're talking about here. I don't really get why Aaron Boone has to be so soft with Stroman. Can you imagine George Steinbrenner putting up with this? No, you can't, because if he was alive, he'd somehow find a way to ban Stroman from ever using the word Yankee again. Yet here's Boone being like, yeah, his feelings are hurt and you know, I want him to be here, but he doesn't have to be. Like, what? How on any planet or any Doctor Strange multiverse is that good for the team? To have a player doing this? Are you joking? It doesn't make sense for anybody to tolerate this, let alone a team like the Yankees, where the entire point of the franchise is, you know, an emphasis on playing for the pinstripes and the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back. But you're going to let Stroman pound and disrespect everyone? What is going on? Well, Stroman did finally show up to camp, so that makes things a lot better. In case you missed it, the Yankees added Max Fried over the offseason, a good starting pitcher to an already strong starting rotation. So a rotation Marcus Stroman was already the odd man out in just got better. So naturally, Stroman isn't expected to be a starter. At least not on the Yankees he's not, which is partly why they've tried trading him and why he's so salty. So when asked by the media if he could handle being a reliever, before the reporter could even get the question out of his mouth, Stroman said this.
Considering your pedigree, could you handle being a reliever?
I'm a starter.
So right now,
I'm a starter.
You're the sixth starter, so how do you handle that?
See how it plays out. I'm a starter.
You do not want to pitch in the bullpen?
I won't pitch in the bullpen. I'm a starter. I'm a starter.
What a guy. What a teammate. It's going to be funny when he's off the Yankees and starts trashing them again by calling Aaron Judge racist. And, you know, like he makes an excuse here. Yeah, the excuses he makes would be a lot more believable if, you know, there wasn't an entire history log of this kind of stuff prior. It sucks. It really does. I mean, for a guy who is always preaching good and positive vibes, trying to be an inspiration for kids, his actions repeatedly go against all of that. Marcus Stroman really could be a fun, flashy player with good messaging, but instead decides to pick fights and cause problems everywhere he goes, to spread negativity. He fails to acknowledge any wrongdoing other than the one time after Judge had to talk to him, only to disrespect everyone this spring, blames things on racism or whatever other excuse in the book he can come up with, just constantly pointing fingers at every single other person he can possibly find other than himself. I mean, at this point, it's undeniable that Stroman's the common denominator here. And to bring this full circle, the little boy crying wolf continues to show why he can't be trusted. But unlike the original story, no wolves are coming, just repeated patterns that show Marcus Stroman is the problem. I hope that analogy made sense. Let me know your thoughts and thank you for watching.